So for me, like for a long time after, like any kind of conflict with a man was just like hugely triggering, because my experience was this will lead to someone saying these awful things to you.
With any dream, the wind won't always be at your back. The sun won't always be shining, and some rain is going to fall. American Family Insurance is like a good, solid roof that you can trust to protect your biggest dreams. With plans that could save you up to 23% when you bundle your home and auto. Also, you can continue to dream fearlessly, no matter what comes your way. American Family Insurance. Get a quote or find an agent at amfam.com.
Visit amfam.com to learn how discounts may apply to you. American Family Mutual Insurance Company assigned its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where the sky's the limit thanks to better internet. With lightning fast speeds up to 1 gig, you can game like a boss, stream like a pro, and watch like there's no tomorrow. Stream, watch, post, send, and trend. Do it all with our fiber-powered network, bringing you reliable, fast internet. Welcome to BreezeLine. Visit breezeline.com for latest offers. Service subject to availability. New customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for details.
Shh. Welcome to the Secret Life Podcast. Tell me your secret. I'll tell you mine. Sometimes you have to go through the darkness to reach the light. That's what I did. After 12 years of recovery in sex and love addiction, I finally found my soulmate, myself. Please join me in my novel, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, a 4-time bestseller on Amazon. It's a brutal, honest, raw, gnarly ride, but hilarious at the same time. Check it out now on Amazon. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Brianne Davis-Gant. Today, I'm pulling back the curtains of all kinds of human secrets. We'll hear about what people are hiding from themselves or others. You know, those deep, dark secrets you probably want to take to your grave, or those lighter, funnier secrets that are just plain embarrassing. Really, the how, what, when, where, and why of it all. Today, my guest is Alexandra. Now, Alexandra, I have a question for you. Dun, dun, dun. What is your secret?
So my secret is that when I was married, I was suffering verbal abuse silently within my marriage. And I didn't tell anyone. And it was my secret to hold.
Oh my God. How long did that go on for?
I would say the extent of the marriage. And the marriage wasn't very long. I was married for about a year, I guess, that we were like together, living together. The marriage continued, like we didn't get a divorce right away, but we were together for about a year, and it went on throughout kind of the whole time.
How long were you guys together though, before you got married, like and together? We
were together for probably before the marriage. I think it was 6 or 7 years.
Oh, wow. So you waited.
Yeah. And we started dating when we were, I think we were like 22, 23, so young. Yeah. And then, we just kind of dated. We lived together. Like we even lived together for 3 years before we got married. Mm-hmm. And then we got married, and then it started happening. So it was crazy.
You know, that's so fascinating, because I thought, honestly, you were going to say after you said that you guys were together for like 6 months, and then you got together and got married. And I was like, oh, did you not know the person? You know, because I feel like a lot of people rush into things not knowing, but you knew the person.
Yeah. And the thing with what I experienced, he could be that way with, say, friends or even family members, but he never did it to me. So in my young, immature, naive brain, I thought, well, he's not doing it to me, so it's okay. Well, It's never okay. And that would be like one thing I would say to any man or woman, because it can happen to anyone.
Yes.
What they do to other people or what they say to other people, and in my context, a man, so like what a man does to other people or women, he will do to you in your marriage, even if he's not doing it before when you're dating. It will eventually, you will become the target. That's what
Can you give me some examples? Because I know people are listening out there, and even if they're experiencing it, there's something about we downplay it to ourselves because we don't want to believe that is happening.
Oh, for sure. So when it was happening, like throughout my life, nobody had spoken to me like that or treated me like that ever. Mm-hmm. So when it started to happen that way, it just felt so like foreign. I didn't know how to make sense of it. So again, I just kind of like downplayed it in my mind, but it was things like, it was subtle things like sarcastic jabs or like passive aggressive comments. But it could also be really overt things like with him, like, like being called a bitch or being told like there's something inherently wrong with you. And so it's like these, we sometimes say these things very like loosely, I guess, but like when it's targeted at you from the person that's supposed to love you the most, it's so unsettling, and it just unsettles your idea about yourself.
Yeah.
So and it was just like, it would come when there was say conflict in the relationship and he was in a place of stress, and that's how he dealt with it. I understand. But so for me, like for a long time after, like any kind of conflict with a man was just like hugely triggering, because my experience was this will lead to someone saying these awful things to you.
Yeah, because you guys were together for 6 years and you saw him call like other people bitches or talk bad about other people in his life or coworkers or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be like, it could be, say, I had seen it. He would talk about not my female friends necessarily, but like females sometimes that were strong-willed. And he would say, call them a bitch. And at the time, like I said, like, it's not okay. It's never okay to use that language towards anybody, especially women. But I just, like I said, I was young, I was naive, I was in love. And I kind of was like, oh, well, like, he doesn't mean it. Like, it's probably, he doesn't actually believe it. But now looking back, he probably did. And eventually I became the target.
So why do you think that happened? Because you were finally completely committed to him and like the marriage. Do you even remember the first time it happened?
Sort of. Like, okay. I kind of do. Like yes, actually I do. It was about, I think 3 months in. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the specific incident. It's crazy. I can remember because it led to trauma. I can very much remember how I felt, and like I can relive moments of the moment, but I can't remember all the details, which is kind of interesting.
Not really, because we black it out when there's trauma or PTSD, when there's like a bad breakup or bad toxic relationship, that creates trauma in our body, and we cut off some of our memory to make it easier for our psyche to handle.
Yeah. So I know. So it happened about 3 months in, and it's so, like I said, it just is so foreign. It's just like all of a sudden, it's like being hit without being hit. And then you have this invisible wound, but no bruises to show for it. That's how I kind of look at it. Yeah. And then, so it kept happening. And then eventually when we did split up, I had so much trauma, and I just thought it was from the end of my marriage because it was quite sudden. So which was it was traumatic itself, but there was so much trauma for years that was just about the verbal abuse. And I didn't realize that actually till like a year ago, when I would have sometimes conflicts with my partner, which we do, like in a relationship, we have conflict. And I would have these massive overreactions over like
hysterical, historical.
Classic like trauma reactions. Like I would need to go to like an enclosed space. Like I would like close the bathroom door, like like trying to, like I would flee, like get a fight or flight.
Fight or flight.
Yes. I would fly.
I did too. I always ran to the bathroom and shut the door whenever I was in conflict.
Yeah. And then it would get to the point also, sometimes I would fight. Like I would just like react extreme. And then I just sat in that, and with therapy too, I was like, why am I reacting? And I realized like I still had a lot of trauma to work through. Mm-hmm. And my trigger, like I said, was a conflict with any man, because with my ex, I would either be called that, or I would just avoid conflict altogether to avoid kind of that
aggression coming at you.
Yeah. And for him, he dealt with stress, like I said, and anxiety and anger by like lashing out. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's okay, but it helped me understand the whole experience, I guess.
Do you know if his parents fight like that, or he was raised?
Well, his story, his dad wasn't around. And I think I'm not sure, growing up how his family relationship was, but I would imagine he saw it somewhere that it became okay, or it
became normalized.
Yeah. Yeah. And in his life too, because like I said, I would sometimes see it with friends or whoever, and people they didn't expect it from him, but they just are like, oh, that's just like him. Like, it's okay. Like, it's just him. And I think sometimes with people that have damaging behaviors or toxic behaviors or abusive behaviors, there's not enough people that say it's not okay.
No, usually it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
I think when you just said earlier, and I want to go back to it, that it was like getting punched, but you don't see the bruise. And that's what I always say, like those toxic behaviors, those toxic relationships, when they're not physical, not that either is worse than the other, but it's like a million little cuts that you don't see, that you're like killing yourself with. Like someone's doing these little cuts all over you and you're bleeding out and you have no idea and you can't see it.
100%. And like, I'm a big reader. I try to make sense by reading things. And after our relationship ended, I read this book. I think it's called The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans, I believe.
Okay.
That's the title. And she listed off all these different ways someone can be verbally abusive. And some of it's like that outright, like swearing at you, that kind of thing. But it's like little stuff like, like sarcastic comments about any kind of like aspirations you have, or passive aggression, or stonewalling,
gaslighting,
like it's all kind of part of that. And I realized like he didn't check off all the boxes, but there was it was a lot more than I even realized myself.
Yeah.
And when I actually sat down, and I remember one day after I wrote in my journal, like everything I could remember, all the different things he had said and I couldn't believe the list that I'd compiled, because I think in the moment when it was happening, I just tried to not black it out, but like forget it real fast so that it didn't sit with. Yeah. And so the secret, I guess, I didn't tell anybody till after, because I was really ashamed. So I think this is for like a lot of abuse survivors, whether it's physical or emotional or financial or verbal, we feel shame because we actively, I guess, like chose this relationship. We've gone along with it. And even though someone's treating us badly, we continue to stay.
Yeah.
And so there's like shame that you're continuing to stay, because abuse isn't black and white. Like this person that's doing these awful things, when you're being abused, you don't look at them as like a monster. You look at like their behavior, like this is like that.
And you make excuses too.
Yeah.
And he had a bad day at work. He lost his job. We couldn't pay that bill. Like you always make excuses. And then you try to turn towards the moments. Oh, but he was so loving the day before, or he bought me that sweater or something.
Yeah. And it's even funny. I realized in this episode, I even made an excuse. I was like, when he was stressed, he would do this, which is kind of an excuse because it's never.
Yeah. You said it 3 times, right? Just so you know, she said it 3 times. You're still trying to justify the abuse. And you're like, I know, I understand he's probably going through a lot. And it's like, no,
like
he's being a dick.
Okay. So that's funny. Like I'm even past it. I realized what he did and that it was wrong. And then I'm still sitting here making excuses. So I think you feel shame, or at least I did, because, well, first of all, if you start telling people, they're going to tell you to leave. They're going to right away say, leave. And maybe you're not in a position to leave, whether it's like kids or whatever. And
financial or
you're just like not ready to throw in the towel or something. I don't know.
Or love addict. There's a lot of people that stay in those relationships because they're addicted to that person.
Yeah. And for me, I was raised in like a Catholic family. So I had that playing. We were married. And I wasn't super young, but I was like 29, which is youngish, in the marriage spectrum. I wasn't 50 or anything.
Yeah.
So I also felt like I couldn't leave because I just sort of gotten married, and I felt like I was young to be going through a divorce. And there was a lot of shame with like a divorce itself. So, and I felt so ashamed that someone was treating me like this, and I let it be okay, sort of, because I didn't leave.
Yeah. But here's the thing. And is it because you were just married too? Because it happened pretty quick. Yeah. I mean, usually it doesn't happen so fast.
Yeah. That was kind of crazy. Yeah.
Cause I remember someone that was in a bad relationship and they just got married and she's like, we just spent all this money on the wedding. And I was like, who cares? But it's hard to tell someone when they're, wanting something to work so badly.
Well, yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, we had been together for 6 or 7 years, lived together for 3 years. And so like people, exactly. They'd be like, didn't you know? Like, how could you not know? And even my mom asked me that, like, how could you not know? And it was like, well, yeah, I saw the signs, but I was never the victim. I was never the target until we got married. And then it's, like you said, it happened so fast. So I felt like, how could I get married and then just split up so fast? I would feel so embarrassed about it. Yeah. Even though you're right. Like, who cares? Now I don't care. Like, if I ever am in that relationship again, I will leave like this, but like at the time.
But you're right. You can't tell people to leave, because I work with a lot of people and I can't ever tell them to leave. I can say, I suggest this. This is what should be. This is how you should talk, but you can't make someone leave a bad situation. You just can't.
And sometimes I think you're also so connected to that person. And so you protect them. That's the big thing with abuse too. We protect our abusers. And so, someone saying you should just leave sometimes feels like a bit of an attack, even though you're not. You're trying to help and like you're trying to tell them like, no, you need to go. But I think, if you're suffering it at the time, it can feel, and then you can just turn into the relationship more because you're like,
because you're like,
stick it out.
Yeah, you stick it out and then you kind of start blocking out other people and just trying to focus, like fixing this relationship, which you can't fix the person, right? Did you do that? Yeah. Towards like the end or anything?
Not like, I think because I hadn't experienced abuse in my life, like I was raised by relatively healthy parents. And my friends, like we're all very healthy for the most part in the way we interact.
Come on, please. Okay. I believe everybody has some sort of ism. Everybody goes someplace where they don't want to feel their feelings.
That's true. That's true. Yes.
Don't believe her. Everybody's got problems.
That's true. But I guess I just had never been abused, I guess. Right. So I just didn't have that like understanding. Mm-hmm. So when it was happening, it was just so foreign and it was it felt so extreme. So for me, instead of like trying to fix him, like I weathered it for a while and I thought in my head, maybe this will change. Like I didn't do anything on my end to change him, I guess. I just thought maybe it will stop. Yeah. And then just like, it didn't. And I was just like, and at one point it just like in one of our interactions, it was an episode of verbal abuse. And I was just like, I had been kind of pushing it down, just dealing with it. And then I literally exploded. I remember that incident. I was just like, you know what? I want a divorce. And then I just like got my stuff and I left.
Wait. So you're the one that asked for divorce.
Yeah.
So what happened that got you to a place where you were like, enough? Like, what was that moment?
Well, I think it's like that fight or flight. Like for the whole time it was happening, I was like, or avoiding, right? Like I was avoiding it and I was like, pushing it down, I guess. I wasn't flying away. I wasn't being fight, but I was just like avoiding it. Right. And then that pushing down eventually just kind of exploded in this incident. And that was like the fight. Like I want a divorce, but also flight because I just like left. Right. But then I always thought in my head, I might go back. Like, even though I had said those words and I had left, I thought, well, maybe, people reconcile and maybe this will be the moment where he'll like, okay, I need to go to therapy and I need to figure this out. But he never really did. And he never really put in like I imagine in his mind, he thought he fought for the relationship after the marriage, but I didn't feel it. And so after we split up, because there were still episodes of like sarcasm and passive aggression. And so I just kind of never went back. And then we had talks and stuff, but I just never returned to the marriage. And I just realized that I wanted not only more for myself, but I wanted kids. So I thought if I'm going to have children, like there's no way I would ever want them to be spoken to like that from their father. Yeah. So if I want children, I need to end this marriage and seek out another relationship or whatever that looks like. And also just for me, even if I never had kids or never had another relationship, just it's way better to be alone and feel sane and happy and healthy versus like in a relationship where someone is making you not only not feel loved, but also like you start hating yourself. Yeah. Like
Welcome to BreezeLine, where the sky's the limit thanks to better internet. With lightning fast speeds up to 1 gig, you can game like a boss, stream like a pro, and watch like there's no tomorrow. Stream, watch, post, send, and trend. Do it all with our fiber-powered network, bringing you reliable, fast internet. Welcome to BreezeLine. Visit breezeline.com for latest offers. Service subject to availability. New customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for details.
Hey listeners, this is Malachi Stewart, inviting you to join me and my co-host Leah Henry on a new podcast called Positive Voices. We are bringing knowledge and empowerment to the DMV and beyond as we amplify our voices to the HIV community. We've created a safe space to share life experiences, discuss resources, and encourage people living with HIV to seek out care and treatment. So let's raise our voices and create better outcomes for people living with HIV. Please join us at dcnshiv.org/podcast to watch, listen, and see what resources are available in your area.
They say money can't buy happiness, but yes, it does. If you find $5 on the sidewalk, you're pretty happy. Now imagine that happening all the time. With the Upside app, you find cash in places you never expected. Restaurants, grocery stores, gas stations, all the places you go. There's cash back waiting for you to find it. Will Upside solve all your problems? We can't promise that. But it will give you a little something extra so you can treat yourself. And there's nothing like a few unexpected bucks to brighten your day. That's life on the Upside. Download it today. Get the free Upside app and use promo code GOODLIFE10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code GOODLIFE10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Start living life on the Upside with the free Upside app.
It was great. At the end of the relationship, like I would talk to my best friend and just like the words I was saying about myself were just so untrue.
Like what were you saying?
So I was saying things like I would be telling her stories and then I would pause and I'd be like, but I'm just like, I'm not good at talking. I'm not a good communicator. And she saw me. She's like, Alex, like my job is a teacher. I'm an elementary teacher. She's like, you're a teacher. You talk all day. Like you're not a bad communicator. It's like, oh, okay. That's weird. Why am I saying this? Or It'd be things I'd say, well, I'm quite a sensitive person. She's like, you're not. you're not sensitive. Oh, okay.
Isn't it so funny that like we try to turn it in on ourselves always, like to take responsibility for someone else hurting us. We then turn it and twist it and make it about ourselves. Like there's something wrong with ourselves. Did you do that a lot at the end or during the relationship?
After.
Ooh.
So yeah, it was crazy that like it's like, honestly, like it was very traumatic. Obviously, I just like pushed it away while it was happening. Mm-hmm. And then it was after the fact, I like after we split up, I like had a full year of just a really dark depression. And during that time, it was just like, I was just like saying horrible things to myself about myself. Like no one's going to love you. Cause he also told me that like, it's going to take a very special person to love me again.
Oh my God. I want to strangle him right now. Yeah, like everybody worth being loved. Like if you're on this planet right now and you're born, you're worth loving. Like, so if anybody's telling anybody out there that is the most abusive thing to say to somebody.
Yeah. Like it was stuff like that. So like I said, it was the swearing, but it was also things like there's something inherently wrong with you. It's going to take a special person to love you. Like there's something wrong with your family. So it took a long time of like, I believe these things. And then it took a while, like, and then I started saying it to myself. Like I don't need to plug anything, but I have a book coming out. And in the book, I kind of talk about, like, I said these horrible things to myself, like after we split up, like for a long time. And I all of a sudden realized nobody's abusing me but myself. I was doing it. I was the person doing it.
That's so fascinating. You just said that because I had a moment like that the other night and I haven't talked about it, but I'm the villain of my story. Mm-hmm. Like I'm the one that speaks to myself the worst than anybody else. And I had this moment at 3 a.m. that I woke up and my subconscious was like, you're a loser. Like, you're not good enough, all this stuff. And I literally was telling my brain, like, stop, it's not true. But when other people tell you those things, you then start to believe them.
Yeah. And I think I wrote once, I said something like, he had said words that planted invisible roots in my mind, and they were really hard to pull out. And I think that's what verbal abuse does, and other abuse, but like verbal abuse, it like plants these roots, and they just, they grab your brain, and it's really hard to just pull them out and get them out of there, because you're like, well, if they said it, you know, there must be some truth to it. Yeah. But there's not. Typically there's not. It's usually, well, not usually, it's almost always about them. Yeah. Always about them, not you.
Yeah. So you went through this dark place. I mean, how dark did it go for you?
So like I've talked about this online, like on social media and my blog. Like I went through depression and anxiety, and I even was in a place like I had suicidal ideation secretly again. Like that's another secret. But
here's another secret.
There you go. I remember that year after we split up, we still had the house we were trying to sell, and I'd be in that house like alone, and I would be coping by drinking like bottle after bottle of wine kind of thing, crying alone. And in those moments, I remember I had like, I thought I'd written in my journal, like, I just want to like melt into the ground. Things like I felt like I wanted to die, like
disappear.
Disappear. And I would sit there on the floor, and I would like empty pill bottles. That's how I decided I would do it. And like every time I thought, okay, this is the time, I never did, because I didn't want to die. I realized what I wanted was to be free of what was going on in my mind. But at the time I was suffering depression, so I couldn't logic that out at the time.
No, you can't. And that's the thing. I mean, I write about it in the book too. I love that you have a book coming out and telling your story, but it's like, I write about all these moments you think about your death, and you're like, what is it going to be like? People are going to do this. Like even at the beginning of my recovery, I talk about like, I wish I wanted to just drive my car into the middle of the median, just because I didn't want to feel this pain anymore. And you don't know what to do with it. And the only thing I can say, and I think that's what you're saying, is you have to walk through it. You have to walk through that pain.
You have to. Otherwise, it will continue to haunt you. Yeah. Like as long as you don't face it. And I don't know. I mean, if you can do it by yourself, great.
I don't know anybody that can do it by themselves, because you can't fix your brain when your brain is what's sick.
Yeah. I needed therapy. I didn't need pharmaceuticals. That was like something we talked about, but I decided in the moment, like because an event, an experience created this, I thought like I can work through it in different ways, because I hadn't been suffering. Like arguably I hadn't had a chemical imbalance my whole life. So I was like, well, I'm going to try. And then that was always an option to use SSRIs, but I never had to, which is, I'm thankful I didn't have to, but I would have if it had continued, or if I had continued to have like those intrusive thoughts. But going through all that, I realized how traumatic verbal abuse really was, because a lot of the trauma was from the divorce, but a lot of it was from this abuse.
I think 100%. It's those invisible cuts. Those invisible emotional cuts. I always think those are the hardest ones to like you said, rip out the root. Like if someone hits you, you see the bruise, but if someone verbally abuses you, you can't see it. You can't say, see right here, when he said this, it made this mark on my soul or my face. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I don't like that word, but kind of nutty.
Nutty. She's nutty. I don't mind the word crazy people at all.
I've had people that I've used it before in reference to myself, and they got offended. So I don't want to offend anybody.
Oh, we offend people here all the time, and it's okay. We're all in this together.
Okay, good. But at the end of the relationship, I had wished that he had hit me, because then I'd have a bruise to like show as evidence why I had to leave so fast from my marriage. And even during the marriage, there was moments where I was like, I wish he would just hit me, because then I could be like, here's the bruise. Like now you can see, you would for sure be like, oh, good. I'm glad you left. But verbal abuse, like some people, they have a different, I guess, level of tolerance of it too. Like some people will be like, oh, he called you a bitch. Like that's not a big deal. Like well, whatever, like deal with it. Where other people will be like, that's horrible. So whereas like physical abuse is very like, I think cut and dry, people are like, no, leave. Yeah. So this, I had wished, that's why I say it's crazy. Like I wish he had hit me, but at least then I'd have something to show. everything I have to show is invisible. These invisible
I've actually said that too. I've said that even with friendships, because let's talk about friendships for a minute, which we never thought we were going to discuss. But I just like even friendships, sometimes people abuse you or are passive aggressive, like you said. And at moments, even with friendships, and I was like, I wish they just do something physical so I could like get enough to like work up the courage to leave. Yeah. And it's like, no, you should leave anyways. They're horrible people. Like they're abusive, but it's hard.
And friendships can sometimes be the hardest thing to break away from.
Oh, those are the worst.
Right? Because
they're worse than divorces. Friendship breakups are horrible. They are the worst pain I've ever been in.
And you will never be friends again. Like even with a divorce or a breakup, like maybe one day you'll get back together, but likely not. But with a friendship, if you break up a friendship, you're probably done, because it's pretty extreme, because people don't break up. They just sort of like phase each other out, or there's friendship breakups. I was just talking about the other day about to someone who has a friend that is arguably not treating them right, like being very passive aggressive and just saying rude things. And I said, like, you know, you wouldn't tolerate it from your family. You wouldn't tolerate it from your boyfriend. So why are you tolerating it from your friend? Like, I think you need to establish a boundary with your friend and talk to this person. And hopefully they'll respond and realize, oh, like, oh my God, I'm being awful. And if they don't, then that's your evidence that you shouldn't be friends.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's what I think doing all this work for me is. It's like every relationship. It's just not about sex and love. It's literally every relationship.
Oh, for sure. Because a friendship can really, like, if they're not treating you, that can just be awful.
Oh, it's just as bad. I believe it's just as bad. Now, you said you are now with someone, right? So how is that? How is going? Obviously, you've done the work. So that's the first thing. You got to do the work afterwards, because you'll take it into the next relationship. You'll bring that baggage, correct?
Yes. And arguably before we met, I should have done a bit more work. Like I had done a lot of work and I thought I was totally healed. And then when we had these conflicts, I realized, well, maybe there's a little bit more work to do.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I've literally done 12 years of intense work and I still get triggered by my husband. I'm like, there's another layer that I have to work on.
So, but it's been good. Like he's a divorcee himself, so he understands that experience. And it's kind of funny. I'm kind of happy I ended up with someone who also went through that, because we can kind of understand if stuff comes up, we can talk about it. And neither one of us is going to be like, oh, you're not over it. No, it's just this really crazy thing, extreme thing happened in both of our pasts. So we can kind of understand that. So he's super understanding. And sometimes if I do have like a trigger and I like overreact, I'll talk to him after it's done, and the next day I'm like, I'm really sorry. And he'll be like, no, I understand. It's okay. And so he's so understanding. And so he's kind of, he's a great guy to be with for me, for sure.
Yeah. But he doesn't fix it. That's the thing. You have to do it. You can't get into a good relationship because you won't know how to handle it. Because that trauma comes up. And one of the things we say is we tell each other like, okay, I'm getting really triggered. I don't know why right now. So I'm going to walk away and let's just put this on the table. Like, that's what we say. We're like, time out. Something else.
So good. I should use that.
Or we use that word mistletoe, like mistletoe. Yeah. No more.
I love that. I can use that.
You know, like it really does, because there's something about, you're going to get triggered. You're going to get triggered with your partner about family stuff, about things you haven't dealt with your family, your friends, past relationships. And it's like, you have to have that pause.
Yeah. And he's so good too. Like I didn't have, I guess, many serious relationships after my marriage. He was probably the most serious, but I had like little things going on, relationships with people. And one of them, this guy would say like, if anything ever came up, and not even that much, but anything, he would like refer to my ex-husband as like a scumbag. And so that also was not a healthy response, and it didn't help. Definitely didn't help, because I was the one that married the scumbag. So then you feel bad. You're like, well, I loved him at some point. Like, that's not. And so with my now partner, he definitely, like, he never, even if I'm, talking about these things that happen, he'll never take aim at him, which I appreciate. It's more just like the things that happen and how I'm feeling and how I'm healing and stuff. Nothing about him or like calling him names, because that's just bad, I think.
Oh, I love that, because part of me wanted to call him a scumbag a couple of times. I'm like, what an asshole. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to say.
Well, you can't. I think I write about that too in my book. I say, I'm allowed to call him a scumbag, and anybody that I give that privilege to can, but like, not some guy I'm dating. That doesn't have the right to say that.
Well, I know you have the blog. Where's the blog, so people can, if they want to reach out to you, if they're going through a similar thing, like, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so you can find me at The Splendid Path, so www.thesplendidpath.com. And then I'm also pretty present on Instagram at the Alexandra Eva May.
Yay. And one last question I have. If anybody out there is listening and they are in this type of relationship or feel like they're not sure, what would be your advice for them? Like, recognizing it, like, what would you wish you would have done?
So I think if you feel like you're in that type of relationship, you might be keeping it all to yourself, which is a lot of people do. I think the first step is to book therapy with a professional. You can do that now with the pandemic. There's so many people online. You could do it online. You could do it through an app even, or in person. I think some people are doing that, but book a therapy appointment to try to work through it with the professional. So that would be number one. And then number two, I think realize that their behavior is not about you. It is about them. It is about how they handle whatever they're handling. It is completely about them. And what they're saying is not true. It's not true. It's a way to kind of take you down, to make you feel as bad as they're probably feeling. It's a way to like erode your self-confidence. And it's not true. And you don't deserve that. And it would be better and healthier to be alone than to stay in this relationship or even seek out another one. Like, it's healthier just to be alone and not be abused than to be with anybody. So if you're scared of being alone, like, it's tough. It can be tough to be alone, but it's so much better. And I was so much happier, even when I was going through grief. And I was so much happier because I was away from like trauma. Yeah. Well,
and I also just had this thought, even writing it down, like, you know, you have a communication with something and it just doesn't feel right in your stomach. And you're like, ooh, that hurt. Or I felt something. Writing it down, say, I felt this way when he said this or she said this. And it's like, when you start writing it down, it's almost making it like, so you can look back and go, oh, then this happened. Then he called me a bitch. And then he was saying how ugly my dress is and no one would love me. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but there's something about writing it down.
Oh, for sure. I think that's actually what I did. That's a good point. I made like a list. Exactly.
Look at me. I'm like all proud of myself, people. You can't see me, but I just smiled. Like, I was like,
so yeah. I made like a list. You're right. I made a list because I was trying to make heads and tails of it. And so I made a whole list. And and that actually after we split up, because I was thinking of going back. And so I made this list and it was like crazy long. And I was like, why would I go back to this? And so maybe, you're right. Writing it down, making a list, and you can actually have a full scope of like all that's happened. Like,
and write a list right after it happens. Like, this just happened, because there's something about our minds can twist and manipulate ourselves. And when it's written down, you can't twist that because it's written down that it happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, 100%. I agree.
So glad you reached out to me. I'm so glad we talked about this. Honestly, I think people need to discuss this more because I think people use verbal abuse all the time and it's an epidemic and it's not okay anymore. So thank you so much for reaching out to me. Honestly, I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fantastic. And like you said, I agree. It's an epidemic and it starts with a young girl, like girls in teenage relationships. So it should be talked about more.
Well, thank you. And if you want to be on the show, please email me at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Until next time. Thanks again for listening to the show. Please subscribe, rate, share, or send me a note at secretlifepodcast.com. And if you like to check out my book, head over to secretlifenovel.com or Amazon to pick up a copy for yourself or someone you love. Thanks again. See you soon.
At Kroger, shopping with pickup and delivery is the same as shopping in-store. Same low prices, deals, and rewards on the same high-quality items. It's one small click for groceries, one big win for busy families everywhere. Start your cart today at Kroger.com. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Save more and earn rewards, too. Use your digital coupons up to 5 times, plus earn double gaming rewards points on participating items. Restrictions apply.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where the sky's the limit thanks to better internet. With lightning-fast speeds up to 1 gig, you can game like a boss, stream like a pro, and watch like there's no tomorrow. Stream, watch, post, send, and trend. Do it all with our fiber-powered network, bringing you reliable, fast internet. Welcome to BreezeLine. Visit breezeline.com for latest offers. Service subject to availability. New customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for details.